We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become?
Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Hey everybody, Brad here. Today on the Film and Whiskey podcast, we are turning things over to our incredible friend Zach Johnston of Uprocks. Zach has taken us on a whirlwind tour of movies and whiskey with some of his favorite people, and today he is heading south to drink Texas's own Balcones Cataleja with his good friend and Texas whiskey enthusiast, Lee Diaz of ReserveBar.com. That is all ahead on this special episode of the Film and Whiskey podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Zachary Johnston, and this is Zach's Whiskey Corner of the Film and Whiskey Podcast. Today, we are going to Texas, which I'm very excited about. We've been to Scotland, we've been to the Midwest, we've been to Washington, and down in Texas, we're going to watch a film by Richard Linklater, which I'm very excited about. I believe it's his second official film after Slackers and Sundance, or Slackers got a lot of attention at Sundance. And this film also launched the career of like half of modern Hollywood, basically, actor-wise. And to sort of celebrate the Texas of it all, we are going to be drinking some Balcones whiskey, one of their new releases, which we'll get to a little bit later. But before then, I'd like to introduce my guest, who is living down in Texas. We just went on a big Texas road trip through hill country, all sorts of distilleries, including Balcones. It is Lee Diaz from ReserveBar. Welcome, Lee.
Thanks, man. It's so fun to be here. I mean, this is first of all a great movie pick, and then this single malt is nuts. So I can't wait to dive into both.
Yeah, and so before we do dive in, why don't you just give the good people of Film and Whiskey Nation a little background on what you do for ReserveBar?
Sure. So I've been at ReserveBar for the past 3 years, focused on social and e-commerce. So everything that you see on site is planned by my team and deployed on a weekly and monthly basis. In after hours, so ReserveBar After Hours, I focus on our single barrel program as the curator of our Top Flight series. That's actually what Zach got to join me down here in Texas for, is picking compelling single barrels and bringing them to our customers on ReserveBar. While we were on our trip, we actually hit our 120th barrel in the past year, representing over 100 different brands. So a lot of fun, a lot of great flavors. And I mean, part of our story, and I think why we both love whiskey too, is there are just so many compelling stories in the spirits industry. And so it's so fun to learn those stories as you get to pick great flavors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, for me, almost the most fun of going around the distilleries is, going to Garrison Brothers and hanging out with Donis and the team there and just, listening to them talk and get excited about what they're doing. And, obviously as well with, about Balcones when we're in the barrel house and, the people get so excited about what they're doing because they're doing such unique stuff down in Texas right now that, the future looks very, very bright.
Yeah. And shout out to Alex Elrod from Balcones. That guy gave us an incredible tour and opened up some barrels that I'm not even sure he was supposed to, but I mean, they were fantastic. So it really gave us some insights and really fun to spend some time also with Emma and see the work that she does behind these selections. It is mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling indeed. Yeah, that tasting room where they have all the bottles out there and she's working on blends and everything. It's just, it's one of those behind the curtains that is just astounding. And yeah, we'll get more into Balcones in a minute.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about Dazed and Confused. Film came out in 93. Wasn't really a huge hit when it came out. Critically very beloved, but this really is a cult film. Like, it became big on home video, and also the soundtrack, I feel, really pushed this movie into the forefront of people's minds. So, Lee, what's your first memories of this movie?
Well, so when this came out, because I'm a child of the 80s, so I'm entering like junior high.
Yeah.
And it was my first like, oh shoot, is that what high school's like?
Yeah.
Like, what? It's this fun like crazy coming of age in Southern Texas style 1970s movie that you're like, is this really what it's going to be like? Because you don't have a clue, especially in junior high.
Right.
And so I don't know how we were allowed to watch it. It was one of those like we got dropped off at the movie theater on a Friday, got to choose whatever movie we wanted. We got into this movie and just kind of got to hang out. And I think, as you mentioned before, the number of names we didn't know would become household names that are in this film is remarkable. And just it's just such a cool like view of culture and time. I think everybody should watch it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I sort of have a somewhat similar story where, I was, I think, 14 when this came out. And I do remember seeing it in the cinema, but then I forgot about this movie till like maybe 97, like during my first year of college. And this was like its peak of becoming a cult hit. And like, this was the ultimate sort of like hang out, hook up movie. Like,
Totally.
it was just sort of like literally almost on repeat in, that sort of era.
Well,
But,
you flash forward to college and everybody's watching it in the dorms, right? Like,
everybody. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And also the soundtrack everywhere. Like, it was, if you had that, CD case in your car or in your dorm room, this soundtrack was in it.
Absolutely. I mean, the names, the songs, I mean, rewatching it too, I forgot how many great classic songs are in this movie. I mean, even I just forgot like Lowriders in there too, right? Like, there's so many just great throwbacks in there that there isn't a single song in there that isn't a smash hit.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love the soundtrack open with Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo by Rick Derringer. It's such a perfect mood setter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so before we dive into the actual plot, like I'm just going to read off a list of the actors who basically were launched for this film. You have Jason London, whose career sort of died off, but Joey Lauren-Adams, Mila Jovovich, Sean Andrews, Rory Cochrane, Adam Goldberg, Anthony Rapp, Sasha Jensen, Marissa Ribisi, Cole Hauser, and then Ben Affleck, which is like huge, Parker Posey, huge, and of course, Matthew frickin' McConaughey. And there's even a cameo of Renee Zellweger. She's one of the high school students, like in one of the trucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. She's just hanging out on a car in the party. She has no speaking lines. So I wanted to look at this because I saw her again in there and I was like, does she actually talk in this movie? Confirmed, no speaking lines, just in school, just hanging out.
Hanging out, being Renee Zellweger.
Yeah.
But I mean, some people are, I mean, there's a fucking Batman in this movie.
Yeah.
Like Cole Hauser's on Yellowstone, McConaughey's McConaughey and Parker Posey is, damn near indie icon at this point. I'll find all these people doing amazing stuff throughout the 90s and into up to today, which is sort of astounding. Like, I can't think of another film from this era that has a cast that stacked.
Yeah. And what I think is funny is, the two like larger characters, as far as like acting, in there. So Ben Affleck, he plays the, like what they were joking, like 2-year senior, like jerk, way too well. Like it's too natural of a character where you're just like, oh, I don't know how much of a stretch this was either then or ever. I don't know. Haven't met him, but didn't seem like much of a stretch. And then Matthew McConaughey this is the start of, he continues to get these roles that are just chill, cool Matthew McConaughey, right? Like all he has to do in this film is like show up, show up, drive around, be cool and chill. And that's it.
Yeah. Smoked a little weed.
Yeah. I wanted to start the all right counter. You're like,
I know,
check.
right? There we go. Everybody can drink. We already said it.
Yeah, we should do that. Like every time you say it, you have to drink. It's perfect.
Yeah. So let's dive into the film, because we're not going to go beat for beat on this one, because this film is actually, like the cast, stacked. Like, this is a really plot dense, heavy film. And I kind of forgot that, because I think I was so used to it being on in the background for so many years that when you actually sit down and watch it, a lot goes on in this movie. And so let's start with...
You caught me mid-sip.
Thanks. But yeah, a lot goes on in this movie. So let's start at the beginning where, just from the opening, it's iconic. Sweet emotion, Aerosmith. This beautiful car comes slow-mo into the scene, into the parking lot. They're rolling joints. People are playing dice. It's the last day of high school in May of 1976 at Lee High School in Austin, Texas. And you see everything set up here as well. Like, you see the seniors getting ready to haze the freshmen. You see, we meet Pink Floyd with this group saying goodbye to his girlfriend, and sort of like meeting everybody in the high school who are, it's the last day of school, so it's pretty loose of what everyone's doing.
Yeah, the guys are in woodshop making a bong. I mean,
yeah,
like, it's hanging out. What I love also is you get the freedom of the seniors, and you get like the fear really well captured of the freshmen of like, oh crap, I got to get out of here as quickly as humanly possible.
Yeah, the scene of the 8th graders with their Vietnam vet teacher is just it's an iconic scene when he's Ben, half of you going in the jungle, half of you ain't coming back. It's just phenomenal.
My God. Yeah, he's like, I'm not letting you out early. Like, some of you aren't going to make it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So we get this sort of beginning of, classes, school's out for summer, Alice Cooper. You see immediately when the seniors are chasing down incoming freshmen to paddle their asses. But then we get a very long set piece of the freshman girls and freshman seniors. Senior girls hazing, and it goes into vivid detail. And it's equal parts disgusting and ridiculous, I think it would be safe to say. Have you ever seen this happen in real life, where you have hazing involving so much food and sort of like just openly in the public like that?
No, in fraternity life a little bit, not anything related to high school. All of that was kind of strange. I will confess, I was a band nerd, am still a band nerd. And so I know we would like make the freshmen do like workouts and stuff in the hottest as hot of you as you can get. But like what they were doing was just like next level hazing.
Yeah. And it's sort of like the same thing, like fraternity life. Like, we did do push-ups, sit-ups, and memorize bullshit for the fraternity. But there was a little bit of this food stuff like during Hell Week, but it was sort of like a relief from actually doing the push-ups, So, but like just how, and obviously they comment on how it's, out in the open, they got the parking lot, the parents don't seem to mind. And, it's when we meet Sabrina, who's one of the freshman girls. And, it's sort of like she's coming in with Willie Wiggins' sister, and realize everybody's sort of connected, and, they're all sort of in their little cliques, and, it's all very clear, but also just ridiculous. I mean, this whole scene is just insane.
But it's also really a sign of the times, right? I think the kids of the 70s and early 80s had this level of freedom and just being that was super, just kind of open. Go do your thing. Just don't have the cops call me, basically, right? So like, I mean, even for me growing up, like I would leave on my bike by myself at like 9 o'clock in the morning, go hang out with friends all over town. As long as I was back by sundown, it was fine, right? And there's no question as far as what's happening. And I think, again, thinking about high school in the 70s, thinking about maybe Texas high school in the 70s, like just go do whatever you want. Like go hang out at the skating rink or the video arcade or whatever it is. Like, go do it. Just don't get in trouble where I have to hear about it.
Yeah, that's very much the vibe. And and we sort of we see Mitch, who's sort of like our main freshman. He's getting chased by Ben Affleck and the seniors all the way through the streets in a ridiculous sort of car chase that you think would cause some people to get their daggles up in a sleepy Austin suburb. But Mitch makes it to his door, and his mom comes out with a shotgun on Ben Affleck to get him to stop the. And it's just a great scene because they're about to be paddled by Affleck, and they're almost embarrassed that she's stopping it.
Yes,
like they were so close to it being over.
Well, I think at that point you could tell, like, they're like, we should have just gotten this pain over with because now this is compounding interest, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's exactly what happens. Like, there's a foreshadowing of like, hey, doom is coming. Like, you may have hedged your bets for this second, but you got to pay the piper. It's coming. Like, yeah.
And then so, everybody kind of goes their own ways. And that's when we get into kind of the meat of the movie, the whole second act, which is basically one long set piece, really, because it's just people hanging out, driving around, getting ready to go to a party.
Yep.
So you have, what I'm assuming are the popular girls, seniors, getting ready to go out, and they're driving around, talking trash. You have Wooderson arrives finally, and he's rolls into the hamburger stand, says his signature line. You have then you have the incoming freshmen at a baseball game, and there's seniors there waiting for them to get done so they can get their licks in. And then finally Mitch gets it at the end, but he takes one for the team, literally.
Yeah.
So his buddy on the baseball team asks him to go out the back so he can take his because they're going to get him anyway. Because his sister's a part of the cool girl clique, really. I mean, that's what we're showing anyway. So it's like, it's not like he's not going to be in with those guys.
Yeah. And I think, I just recall plenty of those nights driving around. Like, you don't have cash on hand. Like, you're just hanging out. Like, you are grabbing a few beers from like the pool house fridge and just kind of, going wherever, whoever has anything going on. And really before cell phones and everything, like, if you run in with each other, you're like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? I have no idea. All right, let's go figure it out.
Right.
Until at the end, you just end up somewhere. And this is kind of throughout, like, the use, and I'm going back to the soundtrack, but the use of basically song titles and theming to represent moments in the movie is like perfect, right? And so, the paddling, I actually wrote it down because I thought it was so funny. Like, during the early paddling scene, it's No More Mr. Nice Guy from Megadeth, right? So like,
yes.
Like, there's this great, like, when school's out, it's School's Out for Summer from Alice Cooper. Like, there are just these great moments where they not only use the thematic of the music, but the song title itself is like almost indicative of chapters in this movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it sort of just plays through that way as like Hanging Out continues because, obviously we're sort of following Pink as well as like the head senior because there's a little subplot with him signing a commitment paper for football. And he takes it easy on Mitch. Gives Mitch a ride home, tells him to come out tonight, tells me it'll be really cool to like come out and show him that it hasn't gotten to you. And so, everybody's sort of out and about, Mitch smoking weed for the first time, drinking beer for the first time, which sounds about right for that era. I mean, he's going to be 14 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of like basically the film in this part it's long-ish, but it's just kind of them going between the Emporium where people are playing foosball and pool and people driving around getting beer and picking people up and smashing mailboxes for whatever reason, which seems again highly like police magnetic.
Yeah, it's a taste of life, honestly. Like, man, when you're on those back roads, I mean, even now, you get a sleepy town, you can probably get away with just about anything, right? Especially back then. Maybe not now, but I mean, you could really get away with practically anything. And so I think you just have these moments of like things high school kids were getting themselves into in a sleepy town.
Right.
And
Especially on the last night of school.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you also have those popular kids that, I mean, the football players, baseball players, like they know all the police officers in that town. So like everybody's shutting down their lights. Just kids are going to be kids. It's the 70s. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, and some of their dads are cops. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like this, small enough town, they know what's going on. And yeah, so basically everyone sort of comes together as like, the big party at one of the houses was canceled because the parents were there when the cakes were being delivered. And so they're putting together a party at the Moonlight Tower, the Moon Tower. And people are gathering cakes, and the film sort of is moving towards a big outdoor party, big caker basically in the field. And so again, there's a lot of just hanging out going on. So we don't need to get like too deep into it. There's some great moments though. Just, I love Adam Goldberg's character driving around in the car when he's like, just having a bit of a breakdown about what he's going to do when he goes to college. Like, I thought you want to be a lawyer. Like, I want to dance. It's just a great comedic moment with him.
Wonderfully unexpected moment. Like,
oh yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's so beautifully done. And, you can see like sort of the football bros are all getting far drunker and far more stoned to the point where they definitely 100% should not be driving. But again, like you said, small town in the 70s, that was just the way it is. I mean, to be fair, it's not that drastically different now in that part of the country. I mean, I live in rural Kentucky, man, and that's the only way you're getting around is in a car.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there were some liberties taken in filming that movie, but I think they weren't far off. Like I do think it's a pretty successful representation of Americana. Not too far off from, I mean, what we were doing in the early 90s either. I mean,
true.
We were still in the pre cell phone advent timeframe, right? So like you're just connecting at school or not at all and showing up at places or just driving around seeing what's happening.
Absolutely, yeah. And before everyone gets out to the Moon Tower for the kicker, Ben Affleck's O'Banion gets his comeuppance from the freshman in a pretty good trick, actually. Like they have a little bit of bait with one of the freshmen to get him to a specific spot, and then they dump paint all over him, which it's gotta suck because he goes and sits in his car covered in paint, which is like, dude.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, why are you getting in your car right now? Like that's the first
your shirt off.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Ben Affleck's character is singularly focused the entire time. And this is the first time it kind of breaks that singular focus. And so you have that moment of shift for that character, which is nice. He, up until the point of like breaking his own paddle, right? So like he it's like that moment is done. But I mean, up until that point, he is so singularly focused that it's anytime you see him in a scene, you know what he's after, and what he's trying to accomplish.
For sure. And then once that happens, the whole hazing aspect is over. Like we don't return to it at all in the film, which is it's a good way to end it, where it's just like, okay, this asshole's gone. Let's move on with our lives, sort of thing.
Yeah, the guy's hazing is over. There is the one exchange at the party between the girls.
Oh, and between Darla, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was like, dude, get over yourself.
Yeah, exactly. They sort of like it doesn't even follow through because it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
it's just too much at that point. But also, Darla is obviously blackout drunk. Like,
totally,
we cannot even stand. So there's a bit of comedy in her performance of just being so far gone. She literally falls over and just starts cracking up. Which
absolutely,
we've all been there in that age.
Sometimes I'm still in that age, honestly. I get home and I'm just like, the floor looks really comfortable. I can't make it 25 more feet to my bed. I don't know why.
Oh yeah. So everybody gets to the moon tower. And this is kind of where the movie, I guess, culminates, but it is still just hanging out. I mean, you have some more friction because everyone's either more stoned or more drunk than they should be. So, Anthony Goldberg's Mike gets in a weird sort of fight with Nicky Katt's Clint.
Sure.
Because Clint gets all paranoid about like smoking weed, and Adam Goldberg's Mike is like, "What are you talking about, dude?" And then sits there and stews for probably an hour or two, and then goes up and just straight up suckers Clint, which is just like so dumb.
Yeah.
And then Clint kicks his ass. You see, Pink's hooking up with someone who's not his girlfriend. And, everyone's getting just too drunk and having too much fun. And, it's that sort of.
It's a slice of life. Yeah, it's a slice of life. Like at the end of the night, like people are just making mistakes, right? Like they're just
making mistakes left and right.
Openly making mistakes left and right. And I think just thinking of, again, I think slice of life, because like, man, I've been at those parties where somebody has like done me wrong and it's the dumbest thing. And then you stew about it for however long. And your friends are still living life and you're still stewing.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't do something about it. Like I generally didn't, because I'm generally the smaller dude in the room, but like you just wasted your whole night stewing instead of just being out here with your friends.
Yeah. Well, I've been in many situations like that. Often because I'm like the big guy, and like there have been times where like a smaller guy will have perceived a slight that I'm completely unaware of.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, somebody's trying to sucker me or pour a beer on my head, and it's like, okay, I guess we're doing this. It's obviously, I'm talking about shit 20, 25 years ago, folks.
Sure.
But in situations like this where, and I've been on the other side as well, where somebody's
totally,
and I sit there and stew the whole time, but usually I would just leave because I'm like, what am I going to do? Be that asshole who makes a scene at a party now?
Yeah.
And so I just roll out. But yeah, and the film sort of, again, culminates with, like just people making dumb decisions, and luckily there are no phones around for those decisions to be recorded. And everybody sort of gets home around sunup, and, the cool kids, the jocks, I guess, stoner jocks, go to the football field, and, Conway's there, and they're smoking weed, pontificating, and get caught by security. And, Mitch goes home, and his mom's just like, "This is your one pass." Puts on his headphones. You see everybody sort of go home as sun comes up, and then we end the movie with McConaughey and Pink and their girlfriends heading to Houston to buy some Aerosmith tickets, dude.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna finish a great night, you might as well go get some tickets. And that's another part. Like, this generation will never experience waiting in those Ticketmaster lines, right, or at the venue, like getting those, like getting in line.
Yep.
Like I remember driving from in college, like driving from Malibu. I went to Pepperdine, so driving from Malibu to Hollywood just to grab some tickets. And so you're up at like 6:00 in the morning, driving through the canyon, still wiping the sleepies off your eyes and getting those tickets. So I love that it ends with that, because it's another part of like summer starting. We're getting those tickets for that show we really want to go to.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember doing the same thing, driving to Seattle and having to go to like the Key Arena, get tickets like to the venue. And that was it. There was no other way. And you'd get there and you'd be like, shit, is this line worth waiting in? Because they're like, it's already 1,000 people deep, or it's 50 people deep, or whatever. So, it was always a little bit of a roll of the dice. And, but yeah, and the movie sort of ends with them on the open road and their whole life ahead of them. And, still somehow, being 18, 19-year-olds who can handle partying all night and driving to Houston in the morning to buy tickets.
And very poetically, we end with the song we started with, and I don't think that happens too often, right? And
right. Yeah.
And I love, it's almost like it's just a new day. Like, this is we're living. This is the next day, and it's the same tune. So let's keep let's keep rolling down.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's sort of, and that's the gist of the movie. I mean, there's more details here and there, but it's really just a hangout movie. Like it's the cool senior girls hanging out, it's the stoner jocks hanging out, it's the freshmen hanging out, it's the sort of nerdy seniors hanging out, and then all sort of intertwining. And what I sort of love about this film is they all are intertwined. Like I feel like in the mid 90s, especially in the mid 2000s, and Mean Girls is a really good representation of this. There's this false idea that cliques never mingle. It's like they sit at that table and they don't talk to them. And they sit at that table. That's never how it is. Like there's always people intermingling between them all. Like there's always, the stoner jock, and there's always the nerdy jock, and there's always, the cool kid who also, can talk about TV all day long. And there's always these interactions between these groups. And yeah, there are core groups, but they all interact in one way or another.
Yeah, and some of them are forced interactions, right? So like, you don't, even if they wanted to stay away from each other by the nature of just frankly being in high school, you're commingled. So like there's just kind of natural and unnatural interaction that takes place. And I think this just captured that relatively well. The one funny thing about the party that I thought, again, getting back to the music and how well the music is used to tie in, is the moment the last keg is tapped. So tapped out, not tapped out. It's Tuesday's Gone from Leonard Skinner, which I thought was like, it's gone. That's it. We're out. And I just love, again, like, everything down to the music is just so well timed and prepared, where you have these moments that are told in picture through the actors and their experiences, but also through the music. And it just continues to give you this commingling of that experience. And so I just love how that works all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such the perfect needle drop movie, just throughout the whole thing. But yeah, and that's the film, folks. And it is one of those movies that, not to be too much of a broken record here, but it really became, if you were alive like in the mid 90s to early 2000s in high school, college, it was the film that was on in the background when you're hanging out at a party, when you're hooking up with whoever you're hooking up with. Like this was that movie that would be just there. And that has made it, sort of this everlasting film now that still has this life to it, that to the point where McConaughey, his goddamn catchphrase for life is from this film, and he can still show up as Wooderson and people go nuts,
Well, and I think the meme culture and the recapturing of snippets and reusing them throughout as GIFs has brought back relevance of certain moments like that. Like, all right, came back because of, I think, the prevailing growth of UT football and his interactions with UT football, but also the meme and GIF culture coming back and being like, oh, let's capture these moments and these are hilarious. Let's bring them back. Like, I think this was one where clearly it has benefited and kind of lasted through, because it's a great chill line, but it's one that people can, like, it resonates with people because it's just so chill and easy, and it can be replicated. You grab that moment, and now I can share it as a gift anytime I want.
Yeah, I mean, just again, it's a Wooderson and McConaughey scene, but him walking into the Emporium to Hurricane, like that is, the ultimate slow motion walk-in scene that has been killed to death. But it's still resonant. I mean, it's still badass to this day. What's sort of crazy is, this film has, such a huge shelf life, but I gotta do the math, man. 93 to 76 is 16 years. So if this film was made today, it'd be about 2006.
Oh God.
Right. When we were grown ass adults. Like,
wow.
Yeah. So good night, everybody. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, seriously. I'm gonna go drink some whiskey now. I gotta go.
We took it all. We brought them to our land. An endless night, ember hot and icy cold. The rage of the earth. We made this curse. Carved it in the blood on our backs. We did not see. We could not, but she did. And in the end...
What will I become? Senua's Saga. Hellblade 2.
Play it now with Game Pass.
Well, on that note, we're going to go drink some whiskey. So sticking with Texas, not Austin, but Waco, which is just down the road. Balcones. I mean, this is one of the original craft distilleries in Texas. It's been around now for how many years is it? What's this bottle say? 15 years.
15 years.
15-year anniversary. So we are going to be sampling Balcones Cataleja, which is their 15th anniversary Texas single malt. And it is a pretty phenomenal pour. Just a little background. It's their single malt, which they make with 100% Golden Corral malted barley. And they have real Scottish pot stills that they run this stuff through. They have long fermation before that for 7 days. Real Scottish copper pot stills. And then, of course, the climate of Waco is pretty drastic. So they have they don't need to, age their single malt for 20 years like they do in Scotland. They can get a lot more done in 4 to 8 years. In this case, this whiskey was finished in Moscatel, Amontillado, Dolce Oloroso, Palo Cortado, and Sherry Solera Cask. So very, very unique finish on this. And it all comes together for their 50th anniversary release of a very, very unique Texas single malt. Lee, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, so before I jump into the whiskey, your Texas geographers are crying right now. So it's an hour and a half up the road. You get you get to Waco.
Right.
Actually, funny enough, an hour and a half down the road is San Antonio when you're in Austin.
Okay.
So you can do that. But so just for everyone that lives in Texas, I wanted to make sure we got that right.
Yes. Thank you for that correction. I was just there too, so that's really sad that I got that wrong.
Yeah. But man, I think that this is such a wonderful celebration of what Balcones is doing and how they are trying to inform what American single malt can look like, and specifically what malt coming out of Texas can look like. That wonderfully captures the impact of each of these barrels and the fact that you don't need a significant amount of time, especially in Texas, in any of these barrels, because of how much flex you'll get through the highest of high temperatures in Texas and the lowest of low temperatures, which are not that low comparatively. And so I think it's really fun what they're doing with American single malt first, and the fact that they release this as a single malt, I think, is a clear nod to that work, and probably I would say the direction, or what should be the core direction of that work. If it's not, it probably is. But the core direction of their work, and then just bringing all these added influences in, complements or builds upon that platform.
Right. And so Whiskey and Film Nation, but this is the reason I wanted to have Lee on this episode, because he is the biggest Texas whiskey advocate out there right now. And he not only has adoration for these whiskeys, but the region and the uniqueness of the region. And, this isn't Kentucky. This isn't Washington. This isn't Scotland. It's not Tennessee. It's certainly not Indiana or New York. And we were just in the Balcones warehouse with Alex, which was a wonderful time. And it really is a different vibe. Like, it's a brick warehouse that used to be, correct me if I'm wrong, furniture storage.
They used to be a storage warehouse, basically.
Right in the middle of town.
Yeah.
And so they have their warehouse on the 4th floor. So as we all know, heat rises. But what they're doing there is they sort of because it's been 15 years, they've been able to dial in really what they're doing. And so they have a little bit larger format barrels that they're focusing on now. You know, we tried some port barrels and we tried some of these barrels, and they're really finding that they're able to, because it's a large barrel, the extraction they're getting in that short amount of time, they're getting these deep flavors. And what I love about this is the nose. At first, it's like a really rich caramel, almost like a bourbon. It's almost like a little bit of a magic trick. And then as you go deeper, you get that sort of like savory fruit and dried fruit, and the sort of cognac and cherry starts coming through. But it is an Oloroso spice, deep dark spice, sweet spicy cherry. And then it's gorgeous on the nose. I mean, it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, and what I love about, Texas whiskey in general, right? So to your point, it is not Kentucky whiskey. And I think that every whiskey is an incredible celebration of the master distiller and their skill. And with that, the master distiller, in my mind, is mastering all of the elements of the elements and properties around the whiskey that they're developing. And so Jared and team at Balcones need to use unique water tables. And I think there's an influence of the Red River, which we've talked about, which is a little siltier mud. So you have to do some different things during your filtrations. But I think adds depth to the whiskey. Yes. They are trying different grains and malts. So this one, for instance, 100% Golden Promise, but then trying like local grain and malt and figuring out like what the proper mix is. And then leveraging the heat. And to your point, leveraging different barrel sizes in learning the impact of heat in that range and saying, oh, shoot, if we try these different barrel sizes, it might be able to extract different flavors and different components in different timeframes, which is like super fun.
Absolutely. And that comes through, especially on the profile of this on the palate, because it comes across as almost like a stewed star fruit. And a little bit of like tropical fruit barks, like it's not juicy per se, but it is fruity. But then it just like dives into these spices and sort of botanicals and this deep sort of grassiness and this really, really layered yet kind of vibrant feel to it. Like there's no burn, there's not really any heat either.
And you also get these great tannins, right? Which are not your traditional like oak tannins from from the charring or from the charring of your barrel. You're getting actually the tannins that are coming from each of these elements of grape, right? Of wine coming through that. So you're kind of getting those tannins infused in here as well, which is great because there's this nice like mingling of like, on the front, I get a drying effect. On the finish, my mouth starts watering. And I don't know how they got that right. I usually get one or the other. But on the front, it tastes pretty dry, which is those tannins. On the back end, my mouth starts watering and I'm ready for that next sip.
Absolutely. It's interesting. It's almost like an infinity blend of fortified wine on the end, but it all balances out very nicely. And I totally agree with you. You get that softness on the end as well, and that a little bit of moisture, and it really kind of rounds out and draws you back for more because it's like, okay, let's find out what else is in here. It's going back on the nose. So it's so nice because like back on the nose, I start to get this little bit of chili, little bit of that Texas malt coming through.
Yeah,
where it's like that starts going a little bit towards maybe we're going to start playing with some oolong tea. Like there's some playfulness in here where it is still Balcones. You know what I mean?
Well, and so that's why, I also love opening it up with a rock or some water. I chose a rock today just because once we're done, I'm going to keep drinking this clearly.
Yeah.
But I think what's cool about this is, so obviously on ice for your, like, when you're smelling everything, like ice is going to deaden the olfactories, right? But on the palate, it really opens up. You get those great baking spices, you get those great fruit notes. I think this is where also you celebrate that malt even more, is you really get that foundation of malt, which is a lot of fun to play with.
Absolutely. And what's sort of beautiful about it, like I agree, like over a rock, it really, you get almost like a creaminess to it as well. But yeah, it's just, for me, like Balcones Texas whiskey, and they are fairly broad now. They've been around for 15 years, but it might be one of those things for consumers out there. They look at it, they don't really know what's Texas single malt, what's or bourbon, what's this stuff. It's all very niche. Doesn't really fit in with the usual, broad branding of a Kentucky bourbon or Tennessee whiskey or what have you. And that's why it's so great, because they have always stayed in their character. They've not compromised and followed trends. They're like, no, we're going to do what we always set out to do, because it's what we love to do. And that's, they brought they're using proper Scottish pot stills, they're using systems, that are slower for fermentation so that they can do this the way they really enjoy. And that comes through in the whiskey. And that might be a little more niche, or might be a little off-putting for some people, not, who don't want to do the homework. But you can seriously just grab this bottle. I think it's $125, $130 on ReserveBar.com. And, it is such a unique single malt journey, unlike any other, hugely deep, and has this just gorgeousness to it that is, in my opinion, very Texas.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it does everything well. And I think for anyone that's new to just Texas whiskey in general, I think the fun part about, really regional whiskey or bourbon across the United States is, like, the United States, Zach, do you know this? I don't actually know the number, but the United States probably can hold within it like 50 Scotlands.
Oh,
more?
Easily.
100?
Yeah, probably 500.
Okay.
Scotland's tiny.
Okay. So 500 Scotlands.
Yeah.
So we're 500 Scotlands. And what I love about that is you get so much great depth and range of complexity just in Scotland, in different regions. When you do that in the US as a whole, each region can be a great celebration of what that location, what that climate, what that area brings to whiskey, brings to bourbon. When you get to Texas by itself is a few dozen Scotlands. And so now you have, like, even here, some great range of flavors to deal with. And the microclimates and the climate as a whole gets so much hotter than Kentucky that you're going to see like 2 or 3 year whiskeys here in Texas that have developed really well, and their color is crazy and you can't really get a handle of it. I think it's really just appreciating what you can create in each of these regions. And then with Balcones, what they've been able to master with single malt and really use everything about this environment to really nail what single malt and Texas's approach to single malt can, and from my perspective, should look like. I think they really knock it out of the park. And so I think they create a really great model for people to look at as they're developing their own processes, approaches to single malts in Texas.
Yeah. And that's, like in what Balcones nails is authenticity to the place. We both have been around doing barrel picks, and we've both been around this industry thoroughly. And, you see people in Washington or in California trying to make Kentucky bourbon, or you see people in New York trying to make Indiana rye, or you see people in Alabama trying to make, Kentucky bourbon. I say, that's fine. Sure. Obviously, there's a palate out there for it in the masses, but it's, at the same token, make your region's best product.
Yeah.
And that's what Balcones does. And also, to be completely fair, that's what Garrison Brothers does. That's what Still Austin does. There's plenty of great distilleries in Texas doing exactly that. not everyone's doing it on the level of Balcones or like Garrison Brothers, but Balcones really, because again, 15 years, not a short amount of time in the whiskey world, especially the American one. They had enough time to work out the kinks, find what really truly works for them and lean into it. And now we're in kind of, I feel we're approaching a heyday for a lot of these a little bit older distilleries in Texas where, they're 5 years away from being 20 years in, and 20 years in Texas is like, 60 years in Scotland?
Yeah.
Time-wise. And so, there's going to be some amazing stuff coming out of Balcones in the future, as well as other Texas distilleries. And, you're seeing people kind of follow their footsteps as well. You have a Halliday out in Missouri who's doing Missouri bourbon, and it's classified as a Missouri bourbon because it's, they're using Missouri oak for the aging, Missouri grains, et cetera, et cetera. And they're doing the thing they should be doing there. And again, not to decry people in any of these states or who are trying to, chase the Kentucky bourbon profile or the Indiana rye profile. You do your thing. But I always, and I think probably the same, I always like chasing the people who are going hyper local all the way down to, the water, the grain, the process in every way to create something that is that region.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of it is finding your voice. And what is it, that notion of like history favors the bold, right? Like,
absolutely.
Creating a tone of voice in this industry that's a little bit different and saying, we're going to own that. And I think, Zach, to your point, like we had a great weekend of visiting with brands that are doing that so well. You mentioned, Garrison Brothers, Still Austin. I mean, just brands that are like effectively identifying their voice and developing that within the construct of Texas whiskey and what that can look like. Balcones is just a little bit ahead of the ball game, being 15 years in, but at 15 years, the level of complexity and the understanding of who they are and where they're trying to go and what they're trying to do is just a lot of fun to be a part of. Ahead of this, I pulled out some really dusty bottles from like when I first started collecting Balcones. And so, part of my experience after this is going to be pouring some of these out and kind of seeing like, where were they? Where are they now? I think,
Yeah. Yeah. I have some classics in my shelf as well as going back quite a few years. And it's always fascinating kind of revisiting. But I think it's a really good segue back to the film in that, finding your voice, like being in high school and figuring out who you are, like going into high school and figuring out who you're going to be. And sort of, I think one thing that gets left out about McConaughey's character, Wooderson, is he's figured out who he is. He's going to be a guy who works for the city. He's going to be on crews that are cleaning shit up, and he's going to, drink, probably get married and have a couple kids that he'll get divorced from and never see, but he'll always be that guy. Right.
Yeah, totally.
And he's already there. And the same thing with Pink, he's got to make a decision whether he's going to sign his commitment to the team paper and not do drugs or alcohol for their senior season. And he's not that guy. And he decides not to be that guy. He comes into his own. He follows his voice. He follows who he is, much like these Texas whiskeys follow who they are.
Oh my gosh. And Balcones as a 15-year-old,
right?
As a freshman, now has to decide what's it going to be?
What's it going to be? What's next?
And I'm going to call it. I'm just going to say Balcones goes heavy into single malts, starts ignoring some of the other stuff, and really kind of leans into knowing the space. I think this is a great, Cataleja is a great example of what they can do.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see just rounds of releases where we're just not surprised, but delighted every time.
Yeah. And this is a world-class single malt whiskey. Like it can stand up with anything from Japan or Scotland or, Australia by far. And yeah, it's sort of, let's wrap it up here. What are your sort of final thoughts on this movie after having watched it again and talked through it? Like, does it still feel like a cult classic, or is it too nostalgic now? You're sort of like feeling your age.
No, I mean, it still feels like a cult classic. I'll just true confession. After I rewatched it just ahead of this, I instantly was going to eBay to see if I could grab another Dazed and Confused CD.
Nice.
Like
nice.
that soundtrack, just man, how they created, not how they developed that as kind of the soundtrack of life for these kids in this movie was just perfectly done, and everything was just so well timed. And so I think that this should be something that when your kids are old enough, they, all of them should watch, because there's going to be moments again where kids are going to be like, why are they just driving around? And you're going to be like, because you didn't have cell phones, bro. Like,
yes. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that dates it is probably the hazing, the open hazing anyway. Like, just, I don't know anywhere where that still straight up happens, but I don't know. Maybe I'm blind to it.
I think if it's still happening, we're so well removed from it. Thank God there's no hazing in the bourbon community. Like, hey Lee, you just got your 100th barrel. Come here, we gotta go paddle you out back.
Yeah. First, you got to break this barrel down, and we're going to use the stave to paddle.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
See how long you can hold this hazmat in your mouth before you spit it out.
See, now that would be worse than paddling, honestly.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, it's I agree, man. It's one of those films that it's sort of universal themes of coming into your early adulthood. And I love the idea, like we mentioned, like, the whole sort of back third of the film, it is just making mistakes left and right, and, kind of, not so much dealing with those mistakes externally, but knowing what you did and dealing with it internally, and like sort of how those mistakes then drive your decisions going forward. And that's an important thing where you got to have space to make mistakes, man. And, it would be not weird, but it would be interesting because 2006 is still that just pre-iPhone era where people had cell phones, like flip phones and stuff like that, but social media wasn't there yet. And so, like I remember maybe taking a picture on a flip phone in 04, 05, but not really.
R.I.P. to my Nokia brick phone.
Right. And so it kind of would be interesting to see a film like this in 06, which again, kind of depressing given our age, but it is a very distinct time. I mean, the music of the mid-aughts, the movies of the mid-aughts, also the fashion of the mid-aughts is coming back. Mm-hmm. So it's not that out of the question, but wow, that would be a wild movie.
I think all the helicopter parents would shriek in horror in watching this movie. Like, oh, I would never do that. Let my kid do that. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, let your 14-year-old daughter get hazed with just a ridiculous amount of food, raw eggs, flour, ketchup, mustard, mayo, and then driven through a car wash in the back of a truck. Can you imagine? The 70s, man, different time. And the 80s, I don't really think it was that different in the 80s, to be honest.
It wasn't that different.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I was the same way where, ride your bike, come home when the street lights turn on, you go home for dinner. And you didn't report back your whole day where you were. You just
no questions asked. It was like, hey, you got your homework done? Great.
Yeah. Cool. Want to watch TV? Cool.
Wait.
Yeah, sweet. Now sleep. Hey, you want a whiskey? Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Balcones? Yeah, sure.
Can't wait.
All right, everyone. So that's our episode. That's Dazed and Confused with Texas theme, Balcones, Cataleja. You can buy it now. It is around $125. Go to ReserveBar.com, see if you can get it delivered in your neck of the woods. Next week will be our 5th and final episode, which will be Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And we'll be drinking some Wyoming whiskey with that for the Hole in the Wall Gangs retreat in Hole in the Wall, Wyoming. And that will be the end of Zach's Whiskey Corner for this year. Lee, where can people find you, and how can they find out more about Reserve Bar?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can connect with Reserve Bar at Reserve Bar Spirits on Instagram. You can follow my exploits in identifying single barrels at my own account, which is Lee Diaz 24, also on Instagram. Just been a lot of fun. It was actually a lot of fun, Zach, just bringing you along for a few picks. I think oftentimes we have our small groups of people we can hang out with, and it was so fun to be able to welcome you to Texas and be able to jump in. But if you're interested in this release from Balcones or any of the Balcones releases, you can go to ReserveBar right now, and they are available to you. For a lot of folks, we can ship them to you. For some lucky folks, we can actually get them to you on demand, so same day delivery. And all of my single barrel releases are available on ReserveBar as a part of the Top Flight series. You can just search for Top Flight, and you can find all of those whenever you'd like.
Nice. Yeah, that's perfect, especially this time of year. And you can follow me on Instagram, CTP Whiskey, not on any other socials. You can, continue reading my whiskey reviews on upperrocks.com, and otherwise, hopefully, I'll see you all next week with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Bye, everybody. Thank you.